I want to tell you something strange that happens to your brain when you sleep, something that gets more pronounced the older you get, and it has to do with the way consciousness itself is constructed. Now, most people think sleep is this nice, peaceful thing, a time when you rest and recharge. But if you actually look at what happens to your mind during those hours, it's closer to a temporary dissolution of the self than anything comforting. Let me start with what we know for certain. When you're awake, your brain is doing something remarkable. It's taking all these separate signals, visual information, sounds, the feeling of your body in space, memories, thoughts, and it's weaving them together into this continuous experience you call being you. It's like a movie projector running constantly, creating the illusion of a single, unified stream of consciousness. But here's the thing, that continuity is an illusion. It's a very good illusion, but an illusion nonetheless. Now, when you go to sleep, especially as you age, something fascinating and frankly disturbing happens. That projector doesn't just dim, it shuts off completely for periods of time. Deep sleep, what we call slow-wave sleep, is a state where your cortex, the part of your brain that does all the thinking and experiencing, goes almost entirely offline. The electrical activity drops to these slow, rolling waves like an ocean with hardly any features, and during that time there is no you, no experience, no sense of time passing, no awareness that you exist at all. You might say, well, that's obvious, I'm unconscious when I sleep. But think about what that really means. Every night, for hours at a time, you cease to exist as a conscious entity. The person who went to bed and the person who wakes up, they're connected by memory and by the continuity of your body, but there's this gap, this void in between where nothing was happening from your subjective point of view. It's exactly like death in that sense, exactly like it. The young brain handles this differently than the old brain, and this is where it gets really interesting. When you're young, your sleep is rich with dreams, with REM sleep, where your brain is almost as active as when you're awake. So even though you're unconscious, there's still experience happening, still something that feels like you existing in some form. The gap isn't as absolute, but as you age, the amount of deep, dreamless sleep increases relative to REM sleep. Your brain spends more time in that void state, that state of complete non-existence. There's a study I remember reading about sleep architecture across the lifespan, and what they found was that older adults spend significantly more time in these deeper stages where cortical activity is minimal, where there's no dreaming, no sense of self, nothing. And when you wake up from that kind of sleep, especially if you wake suddenly, there's this moment, maybe just a fraction of a second, where you don't know who you are. You don't know where you are. You have to reconstruct yourself from scratch. Now let me tell you why this happens, because the mechanism is important. Your brain uses sleep to do housekeeping, to clear out metabolic waste, to consolidate memories, to reset the systems that keep you conscious during the day. But this process requires shutting down the very mechanisms that create consciousness. It's like you can't clean the projector while it's running. You have to turn it off. The glymphatic system, this network of channels in your brain, it works primarily during deep sleep. It flushes out proteins like beta amyloid, the stuff that accumulates in Alzheimer's disease. To do this efficiently, your brain cells actually shrink a little bit, creating more space between them for fluid to flow through. But this also means less connectivity, less communication between neurons, less of the integrated activity that makes you conscious. As you age, your brain needs more of this cleaning. You accumulate more metabolic debris, more damage from a lifetime of thinking and living. So you spend more time in these deep unconscious states. It's not optional, it's necessary for survival. But the subjective experience is that you're spending more time not existing. Here's another piece of it. Memory consolidation during sleep changes with age. When you're young, your brain is encoding new memories constantly, and sleep helps transfer them from short-term storage to long-term storage. This process involves reactivating the neural patterns from your day, replaying them in compressed form. So even during non-REM sleep, there's some echo of experience, some shadow of consciousness. But in older adults, this process becomes less efficient. The reactivation is weaker, the consolidation less robust, the sleep becomes emptier. And there's a psychological dimension too. Young people, they have this sense of infinite time ahead. Sleep is just a pause in an endless movie. But when you get older, you become aware of time as a finite resource. Every night of sleep is a chunk of your remaining life where you're not experiencing anything. It starts to feel like practice for the big sleep, the permanent one. I remember thinking about this when I was studying quantum mechanics, about the measurement problem, about how observation creates reality in some sense. If you're not observing, if there's no conscious awareness, does time even pass for you? From your subjective frame of reference, deep sleep is instantaneous. You close your eyes and then you open them, and hours have gone by, but you experience none of it. It's a discontinuity in your personal timeline. Now, some people find this comforting. They say, well, if death is like dreamless sleep, then it's nothing to fear because you won't experience it. But I think that misses the point. The disturbing thing isn't the experience of non-existence. It's the recognition that you, this continuous self you think you are, you're really just a pattern that gets turned on and off. You're more fragile than you thought. Let me give you an analogy. Imagine you're a flame. When you're awake, you're burning bright. All the fuel, all the oxygen, everything's there. When you're young and you sleep, it's like someone turns down the gas a little, but the flame keeps flickering, keeps dancing. There's still fire. But when you get older, every night someone blows you out completely and then relights you in the morning. Same candle, same fuel. But is it the same flame? That's the question. The physics of it, if you want to think about it that way, is about information. Consciousness seems to be an emergent property of information processing in the brain. When that processing stops, when the information flow drops below some critical threshold, consciousness disappears. It's not hiding somewhere, it's genuinely gone. And starting it back up again, that's not resuming something, it's creating it anew each time. Your memories provide continuity. They make you feel like the same person, but memories are reconstructed. They're not played back like a recording. Every time you remember something, you're rebuilding it from fragments. So the you that wakes up, it's a reconstruction based on the pattern that went to sleep, but it's not numerically identical. It's a copy. This gets at something deep about identity, about what it means to be a continuous self. We like to think we're like a river, constantly flowing, always the same river even as the water changes. But maybe we're more like a fountain, where the water shoots up, makes a pattern, and falls back down, and then new water shoots up and makes the same pattern. It looks continuous, but it's really a series of separate events. In quantum mechanics, we have this idea of indistinguishable particles. Two electrons are not just similar, they're absolutely identical, and there's no fact of the matter about which one is which. You can swap them and nothing changes. I wonder sometimes if consciousness is like that. The consciousness that wakes up, it's indistinguishable from the one that went to sleep. It has all the same properties, but maybe it's not the same consciousness. Maybe personhood is about the pattern, not about some continuous thread of experience. The older you get, the more you notice the gaps. You start waking up in the middle of the night more often, and each time you wake up, you have this moment of reorientation. Who am I? Where am I? What time is it? You're rebooting your sense of self multiple times a night, and it becomes harder to ignore what's happening, harder to maintain the illusion of continuity. There's also the question of what happens during those moments between waking and sleeping, the hypnagogic state. Your brain activity is transitioning. Consciousness is flickering on and off like a light bulb with a loose connection. Sometimes you have these weird experiences, hallucinations, sleep paralysis, a sense of presence in the room. It's like catching consciousness in the act of constructing itself, seeing the machinery exposed. I read about experiments where they tried to measure the exact moment consciousness disappears during anesthesia. They used EEG to track brain activity as people went under, and what they found was fascinating. It's not a gradual fade to black like you might expect. There's a critical point where the integrated information in the brain suddenly drops, and consciousness just switches off. One moment you're there, the next you're not. Sleep works the same way, though the transition is usually slower. And here's something that really gets me. If you accept that consciousness can be turned off and on, that it can be interrupted and resumed, then you have to accept that it's not some special, eternal thing. It's a process, like combustion or photosynthesis. It requires the right conditions, the right physical substrate, doing the right things. Take away those conditions and it stops, just stops. As you age, you start to feel this more acutely. You start to understand in your bones that you're not guaranteed another morning. Every night when you go to sleep, there's a non-zero chance that the process won't restart. And even if it does restart, even if you wake up, there's this recognition that you were gone, truly gone, for hours. Not sleeping peacefully, not resting, but genuinely not existing from your own point of view. Some people meditate on this. They use it as a practice to confront the reality of impermanence, to let go of attachment to the self. They say, if I cannot exist for 8 hours every night and be okay with it, maybe I can be okay with not existing permanently. But I don't know if that's wisdom or just rationalization. The neuroscience keeps revealing more about how tenuous consciousness really is. A tiny amount of anesthetic, a slight change in brain chemistry, and you're gone. A blow to the head, an interruption in blood flow, same thing. We're incredibly fragile, and sleep is a reminder of that fragility every single night. I think what makes this disturbing as you age is not just the increase in dreamless sleep, but the accumulation of experience with discontinuity. You've lived through thousands and thousands of these little deaths by now. You've had the experience of not existing more times than you can count, and each time you've been lucky enough to come back. But you know, intellectually, that the luck will run out. There's also something about the quality of sleep that changes. When you're young, you sleep deeply, you sleep solidly, the transitions are smooth. But as you age, sleep becomes more fragmented. You cycle through the stages more unevenly. You might drop into deep sleep and then bounce back up to lighter stages. Each transition is another moment of partial consciousness, another reminder that you're a process that can be interrupted. And your dreams change too. They become less vivid, less narrative, more like fragments and impressions. It's as if even when your brain is trying to maintain some form of experience during sleep, it can't quite manage it anymore. The machinery is wearing out. I remember reading about studies on sleep and aging, and one thing that struck me was the relationship between sleep quality and mortality. Poor sleep is associated with shorter lifespan, with cognitive decline, with all sorts of negative outcomes. But it's not clear which direction the causation runs. Does poor sleep cause these problems, or is poor sleep a symptom of a brain that's already deteriorating? Either way, it's not encouraging. The consolidation of memories during sleep, that's another thing that declines. Your brain becomes less good at deciding what to keep and what to discard. So you wake up and the previous day feels hazier, less integrated into your sense of self. Your autobiography becomes less coherent, the narrative thread gets thinner, and there's a cruel irony in all this. The older you get, the more aware you become of time, of its passage, of how precious it is. And yet you're forced to spend an increasing proportion of your remaining time unconscious, not experiencing anything. It's like the universe is taunting you. But maybe there's another way to think about it. Maybe the fact that consciousness can be interrupted and resumed tells us something important about what we really are. We're not souls, not eternal spirits. We're patterns of information instantiated in physical systems. And like all patterns, we exist only as long as the conditions support us. Every morning you wake up is a small miracle, a successful reboot, a continuation of the pattern against entropy. Sleep, especially as you age, forces you to confront the contingency of your existence. You're not a necessary feature of the universe. You're an accident, a temporary eddy in the flow of energy and matter, and sleep is the nightly reminder of that fact. I think this is why Feynman, or anyone who thinks deeply about consciousness and physics, finds this disturbing. It's not that sleep itself is frightening, it's what sleep reveals about the nature of self, about the fragility of experience, about how little separates existence from non-existence. It's a thin line, and we cross it every night. So yes, sleep feels more like death as you age, because in a very real sense it is a kind of death. A temporary, reversible death, but death nonetheless. And the older you get, the more you understand what that means, the more you feel the weight of all those hours of non-existence, the more you wonder how many more times you'll get to come back.